Thank you for listening to the Open Discourse podcast. I'm Charles Mitchell, co-founder and CEO of the Open Discourse Coalition. In this series, I interview thought leaders, elected officials, entrepreneurs, and other change agents. Today, I'm joined by my friend, Coach Pat Flannery, member of the Open Discourse Coalition Advisory Board. Pat, many of our listeners know you from your athletic exploits in the last few decades. I love to start at the very beginning. How did your athletic career start?
Well, I grew up in an athletic family. My father had played professional basketball in the Eastern League. And so in Pottsville, where I grew up, athletics was so big that it kind of gave you the confidence in who you were and if you were a good athlete. So all the way through, my brothers and sisters, we all played ball. So that's really where it started on the east side of Pottsville. And it's really what we had. And we grew up every day playing ball every day of our life. When it got dark, you went home. And when it was light, you were in the playground. So I still say it's the happiest time of our life when it was so simple and easy and you played pickup. And that's what you did all day long. And fortunately, I had some genes and was able to play a lot of different sports. And that's where it really all started in Pottsville. I wouldn't change it for the world.
How old were you when you started playing? Can you even remember? Was there ever a time when you didn't play?
No, I think probably when I was 5, 6 years old, to put bat in your hand and a ball in your hand, and Christmas was all about one ball or another. That was all you got, and that's what we had. And the friendships and, Charles, it's interesting for people that grew up in that era and that time. You had to learn to get along with friends and people because when you play games, you set your own rules, and if you didn't play by those rules, you were probably knocked out of the group. Plus, you played with older kids and younger kids, and older kids didn't take it easy on you. So it was a great time that you really had to learn by experience, and those playground games were as good as they got in your life, and it really set you up for future success, and it taught you failure too.
Now, Pat, there's a lot more to your life, both in terms of athletics and other areas of life, and I want to get to those, but you got my curiosity going right there with when you talked about what that time was like. Mm-hmm. Is it different now for young people who are involved in athletics than what you just described?
Yeah, they really don't get a chance to set their own rules and their own bars is the way I look at it. And, we both have kids. Mine aren't kids, mine are 28 and 30. But having gone through that experience with them, I can remember many days asking them, were they playing in the playground? And at that time, they would go and play in the playground and make this real simple. Their idea was putting all the best kids on one team and they would play because they never had any guy, they never played pickup. And pickup in my world was you got even teams and you banged all day long. And you played whoever was there. And if you were late, you didn't play. So you had to learn to be 10 minutes early the rest of your life because you would be late for the game. And I think the difference is, and I'm not faulting them, but I think the way everything is structured now and the uniforms and the AAU and the travel, I never traveled anywhere to go play ball. I could go to the 2 blocks over. I could go to the next town over and you could always find a game. And a game meant that you played all day long, not just one game with referees. Because in the realm of this, if you and I were playing and you fouled me hard, and the referees nowadays, if they don't call it, then we go and we continue to play. But if you take referees and parents and everybody out of there, and you and I were playing, I think we would be respectful of each other. If you foul me hard, then, that would be something on you that you're going to get one back. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that those days you learned how to play, you learned to respect each other. The games were called by your fouls. If you didn't call that foul, now everything is just set up. Plus, at that time, the doors were open. So we played in the basement of Jackson Street Playground where the coal mines were. They had 2 baskets set up at either end. You could get in the winter time and the springtime or whatever. And we would play there like nonstop, even when the weather was bad, because the doors were open. Now it seems like a lot of things are locked, and obviously the high schools, you can't get in the way you used to. So yeah, sports it will continue to be in our conversation. It was a thread throughout my life that has taught me so many incredible lessons.
One more thing about that change, Pat, in terms of maybe we could call it youth culture or youth sport culture. Why, I'm sure there's more than one reason, right? Life is complicated, but why do you think that change has happened since you were a kid in Pottsville?
Well, I think the what would be the rewards and the benefits and all have grown so much over time, and that people are taking. I go down to Spooky Nook down here in Lancaster, and literally, Charles, you'll see 300 kids playing
Yep.
basketball with their families there, thinking they're all going to get a scholarship. They're all going to. Well, that stuff comes in the eye of the beholder. Whether you can play or not, coaches are going to decide. People think putting that investment in there into that their kid should be there and should be the next one. And I say that because many times it's sad for me because there'll be teams down there that the kids are never going to play anywhere, and yet it doesn't look like they're always having joy, the fun of playing the game. And that was the part that I think was always for us was there was fun in playing the game. I mean, you just look forward to it. It always seems now that the pressure is on everybody from the kids to the parents to whatever you have. And it's only gotten worse. My experience. I've been able to spend the last couple of years, or I was up at Penn State with a young man that played for me. So I've gotten to see behind the curtain of the NIL and be involved in that. So take that fast forward compared to where I grew up, where college was a way to to go away from where I grew up. I love my town, but none of my family went to college, and the only reason I went was because I could hit a ball and I could dribble a basketball. And again, my siblings all turned out wonderful, but I got an opportunity to be able to go away because of that. And that was like everything. Now it seems like we're setting these parameters on these kids as they're going, that it's all about a scholarship. It's all about playing. It's all about, I can't tell you how many folks I talk to that they ask me to help them with their kids or what do I think in school. And if I'm being real honest, the first thing I'm going to say is your son's not good enough to play at the schools you're talking to, or he is good enough to play. And that's an honest assessment that a lot of folks don't want to hear because they look at who became before them and they say, well, Johnny went there and he went there. And the reality of that situation is that the families, I think, put it on them. The kids are being inundated. They get onto social media. They see what other folks, what kids are doing, and it becomes. I'll go back to it. Becomes the joy of that competition, and what you started out for gets messed up somewhere along the lines where we just love to play.
There's so much that I want to draw out of what you just said, Pat. Let's start with the town. Most of our listeners have never been to Pottsville, Pennsylvania. They're from all across the globe, actually. I happen to share your affection for Pottsville, as you know. You mentioned that you love it. Could you say a few words to help those of our listeners who have not yet had the good fortune to come to Schuylkill County to understand the place where you're from a little bit?
Well, I appreciate that, the way you said that and the way you asked me that, because I think it really hammers into a lot of things you and I talk about and that we agree upon. And in essence, what it is I grew up, I was not a great student. I love sports, the books and all that. I was behaved because I had parents that made me behave. I could have gone the other way because I was probably a handful in the classroom. I mean, I had more of my shares of paddles and more of my shares of holding books in my hands. But because I had such good parents and they always looked out for us and you got home at the right time, Pottsville is a place where I think the values and the people that are there, there was always someone, if you were up the street and you were going to get in trouble or you were late for dinner, somebody yelled out the window and said, your mom's looking for you. That's just the way you grew up. What I've always felt that was so important to me is, I know the world we're in now, and we talk about diversity, we talk about, thought and all those things. For me, the experience was my diversity. I grew up in my experiences that when I was playing ball and I played hard and I had coaches that looked out for me and disciplined me and told me what was right and what was wrong. It became a community kind of thing, Charles. I think Pottsville was a community where whether you went on the east side or the west side, we had friends all over town. They knew your families, you knew them in many ways. Our parents were volunteers for the fire company. that when they ran to those things, you wondered where were they going. I had times, 4 brothers and a father running down from the 3rd floor of our house as a volunteer. When you experience those things, it puts in your head about what you should be given and what you should be, what you should be looking out for as far as giving back and doing things with others. And I've been very fortunate. I've said my Biddy basketball coach, my dad, I think it was 25 years of volunteer. He didn't have kids. He had kids that played, but even when they graduated, my dad, Little League basketball. Nowadays, folks, they coach for 4 years while your kids are in that division, and then they move with them. My dad did that 25 years. So they're the kind of things that I grew up with. I was very fortunate to grow up with. What really happened to me, I got good enough in sports that eventually whatever I was going to do with the right values. But I got good enough in sports that people started coming around and saying he could play here, he could play there. And I say that because this is really important to me, that when I mentioned about the experiences, I was not a great student when I came to Bucknell, certainly. But the experiences I had, and the reason that I'm still in love with the place and in love with what we're doing, those experiences I had, I was exposed to thoughts and I was exposed to things that I never even dreamed of, because I grew up in a conservative, not just family, but a conservative area that was work ethic and work value. Now you go to a university that's one of prestigious place, and the faculty and the people I met, they were across the board. And being across the board, I mean, in their thoughts and what they, but you never knew what their positions were. Because that wasn't what, at least this is my feeling to this day, but they gave you an opportunity to learn about things I never even thought about. Charles, I can remember going back, because you've asked me about Pottsville, I can remember going back and sitting with my mom and dad across the dinner table, debating them with things where they're looking at me going, where did you learn that? Where did you hear that? What is that? And that being said, that set the precedent for me that having those ideas and then formulating my own experience, my own thoughts, was because of the experience and thoughts that people were able to share with me. They weren't telling me what to say or what to do or what to think. And I always thought that was the experience I had going up there, that it was an entirely new world and a wonderful world, because there was so many ideas and thoughts going on and ways that people presented stuff. And then much like the folks that we know that are involved in what we do, those same people in the community, professors and all, they looked out for you. They knew, they saw value in you, that you could be this kind of person. But I don't ever remember them telling me what to say or what to do. I remember them teaching me. And that's why this whole idea of staying involved with this at my age and our age and what we do, and the people that are with you all the time, I know that's why they do it, because it's so important to them that these kids get a chance to be able to have their own thoughts and their own experiences to be able to go forward. So that's a long answer to how that whole Pottsville to Bucknell ties, because they couldn't have been more different. It couldn't have been more different, the experience, but they both led into each other.
That's beautiful, Pat. And it's a lot of fun when a friend takes the words out of your mouth. I think you just did that. Because as you know, I always ask everybody who appears on this podcast why they're so passionate about our mission of open discourse, and I think you just nailed it. In what I think I heard from what you said is everything you just described, going from Pottsville to Lewisburg, so to speak. That was the experience that you had, being exposed to all these new ideas, and that's what you want, and that's what I want for today's young people. Is that right, Pat?
It couldn't be. I mean, I wish I could express it. I wish I was smarter, that I could give you the vocabulary and the adjectives to be able to tell you exactly how I feel about this. I tried to express a little bit in the way I speak, and I'm still a used guys, and they probably never take Schuylkill County out of me.
And they shouldn't, Pat. They shouldn't.
I still drink Yingling, and City Chicken is still my favorite meal.
Pottsville Punch.
So that's never going to change. But to go to a school like that, from a place like that, and come up, and to be a Eucharistic minister, and to start a prison program, and to be fortunate to be a captain of a Division I bass. These are all things that I would have never dreamt of. but it really all starts with people that you come upon and influence and have a say in you. And it could have been a whole lot different if I had people that I came across that weren't weren't just guiding me, but they were telling me what I should be doing and what I should be thinking. And that wasn't my family, and that wasn't my experience at Bucknell. And I'll go back to what I said, and I'll say this tried and true. I don't remember. I was a poli-sci econ member, and I remember my professors, and I think there was some professors that were out in left field, and there were some professors out in right field. But you know what? They were good. They were people that you didn't know. They were teaching you about life, and they were teaching you about lessons. But I don't remember ever walking out of there saying, "Well, he's never going to listen to me," or "Oh, that's the way he feels." And I think that was the beauty for us when we went to school, that there was very open-minded. There was a lot of dialogue, and you could raise your hand and not be worried about any repercussions or anything that were going on, and you would leave there just a better person, quite honestly.
It's beautiful, Pat. Now, somewhere on that road from Pottsville to Lewisburg, I have to imagine sports got more serious for you. It began as pickup. I got that. But you said there was a time when people started, reaching out and saying, maybe this kid could go to school. Do you remember when that happened?
Yeah, it was probably my junior year. We had never been to the state playoffs, or it had been 50 years, and we got into the state playoffs. And then in baseball, we had some tremendous district games, and so people start to say, there's a kid up there, there's a kid here, and that's the way it works. They tell you about somebody from a small town. So that started. But again, I wasn't the confident, academic guy at that time. Matter of fact, it's probably an old tried and true story, but the fact is, I think the valedictorian from Pottsville, when I graduated, they went to Bucknell, and then I did. And I think she's still mad because they took me, because I think it watered down the valedictorian. And people say they averaged us out. That's how I got in, with that. So I wasn't that academic guy, but I tried. I worked at it and all. And actually, I'm very proud. I became a very good student when I got to Bucknell because a lot of folks. But saying that about when it happened because I had success in a number of sports. And as people started coming and started visiting us, we had never been through that before. So there would be people that would show up at the house in a black limo, and people would think that something happened in my family. Well, they didn't impress my mom and my dad, and my mom was your mom. The adage in recruiting, for anybody that's listening to sports, you got to recruit the mother before you recruit anyone. I mean, you got to recruit the mother. And if these guys didn't know, the mother was the one that you're going to have to win over. So fortunately, the gentleman from Virginia, I say gentleman, Charlie Willem, who was my coach, my family loved him. And Bucknell was going to let me play both sports, which I wasn't ready to give up baseball and basketball. So I was recruited to go to some places for baseball. I was recruited some places to go to basketball that were bigger than Bucknell. But to be able to play both of them was something that I wasn't ready to give up, and it worked out. It worked out great. I could play baseball there, and basketball became. We changed the nature of the basketball program, fortunately, with our class and what we did, because 3 of us came in and were able to start for 3 years together. So coming out of high school into that environment was a great opportunity.
Did you play baseball your whole way through Bucknell, Pat?
I only played 3 years. I missed the middle one. Part of that was playing 2 sports and then an academic school.
It sounds really hard.
And for a student that's a little intimidated, my sophomore year, I really had to buckle down, and then I ended up learning how to do it, and ended up 2 years on the dean's list. So it's the proudest thing I'll ever say, whatever I do the rest of my life, to end up 2 years like that from where I started. I'm very proud of that.
It's awesome, Pat. A lot of people know you played at Bucknell. A lot of people know you coached at Bucknell. There were some historic things that happened during that time. But I suspect a lot of our listeners don't know a lot about what happened in the middle. You coached some other places. Really nice young lady, got involved in your life.
Yeah.
We all know the best part of your life is Patty.
Yes, it is.
But could you say a little bit about the period between Coach Flannery at Bucknell and senior year Flannery at Bucknell?
Yeah. Well, when we were at Bucknell, a guy by the name of Jimmy Valvano, who's famous, won the national championship in North Carolina State and all. He's a big name that was there. He recruited me when my last year there, and then Charlie Willem took over the program. Anyway, they hadn't had a lot of success, and when we came in there, because of that, 3 freshmen were able to start as freshmen. First 2 years, 500. Last 2 years, we won the conference. 2 years, they had never won a conference. So we really came along. So obviously, my loyalty was to there. But Charles, my plan was never ever to coach. I spent a year as a plant manager for Stouffer Foods in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was playing high school. I was helping a high school guy. I was playing a lot. I could still play, so I had to respect the people because I could play. And it was fabulous in the plant because I had all these folks that I played ball with on the weekends, and I could play. So you had their respect. Started helping the high school guy. The guy got sick. The kids asked me to help the team. I took the team for a couple games, and that's the truth. That's how I fell in love with coaching. I went back to the plant and told them, I went the year, and they said, you have a job if you want to come back. I told them I was going to get my master's, and I went back to Bucknell with Coach Willem. Got my 2 years master's. People like Jerry Comerford and these people were just fabulous to me. Had an experience as an RD. So I was in charge of a dorm and all these RAs. What incredible, I mean, at that age, 21 years old, to be able
awesome.
to do that. Anybody that did that will tell you it's a game changer.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did that, and then it was time to go on. And I had to decide whether I was going to go coach basketball, had some offers, or I had some offers to go run the trucking organization at Weiss Markets. I had a chance to go to Armstrong Tiles in Lancaster. So I had some job offers. And then Drexel University, I knew the coach knew me from playing. He knew I was interested in it. And I went to Drexel as a 23-year-old and was there a while. Went to William and Mary. And then I was ready to have my own program. And I didn't know Anvil from anything. I didn't know where it was. As the man upstairs looks over us many times, my wife's roommate was from Anvil. And at that time, we weren't married. We were dating. And she said, I know where Anvil is. It's a neat little town. So we visited. And the folks down here, Charles, if you've met, many people, folks down here are pure. I mean, I grew up with so many of these folks that are down here. And it was the greatest experience for a young guy full of himself that had all the answers, because there was some folks down here that had a lot of experience that would say, yo, young man, slow down a little bit. These are things that you got to learn. So what a wonderful experience to start your life like that. And then I probably would have stayed down here the whole time, except when my alma mater.
Well, hold on, Pat. Let's take a little timeout. I've never given a timeout to a coach before, but we got to cover some really important stuff before.
30 seconds or full?
Full. Before we go on with this athletic stuff. I mean, First of all, when you're saying here, you mean Annville, Pennsylvania, where you and your wife Patty live now.
Right. This is full circle.
Yep, you're full circle, because what you were just talking about is your first head coaching job was at Lebanon Valley College in Annville,
correct.
PA.
Yep.
And you made the choice when you and Patty were not married. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. So at what point did you figure this out, Pat? Come on, tell us.
Well, it was one of those where I'm going to take this job. Are you coming? And it's like, and it truly was. Yeah. If I got a ring,
yes.
I'm not coming down there to just hang out with you. So we made that decision, and we spent 5 wonderful years down here coaching.
Awesome. Okay. So that's a really important part of the story. Thank you for telling it. And then you were starting to say where you and Patty together went after that.
Yeah. Well, in 5 years, and I'm proud of, we won a national title, which they've never won a national title in anything. So we were obviously it was big thing down, here, big thing for all of us to win a Division III. There's 340 schools, and we ended up standing at the end. So probably the proudest thing you do in coaching. But then what happened, I wasn't looking because I loved our life and where we were, but Charlie, my head coach, who'd been there 17 years, and I was his first recruit. So he was there 17 years. He took the William and Mary job. And so the folks up there, it was a natural, but it wasn't as easy as people think to go back because of the relationships you had here and the whole thing at Bucknell. So we went back, and so glad I'm obviously it was a great experience and 15 years of some of the best guys you'll ever meet and the people. And then to segue that and the success that we had up there, and to be able to say, you know what? See, the thing about coaching and playing, again, and for sports people who are listening to this, I don't know if anybody ever really wants to coach, to be honest with you. For many and for most coaches, it's a way that they make you stop playing and you still want to play. So that's the way you're connected to the game. I never, coaching was not nearly the joy that playing was. And I don't know if any coaches that ever played that had any success would ever tell you anything other. All I ever wanted to do was play. And that's probably why I coached the way I did, because I saw the game a certain way. I wanted to coach a certain way. But then when you get into coaching, it's a way to stay in the game. And so I did it for a long time. And then it was time where I was very proud that it was time for my family and I to say, you know what, there's other things we want to do. And that's basically what happened at Bucknell. We found some other things we wanted to do. And it was a great move.
Great, Pat. I appreciate you laying all that out, because there was a part of your life before coaching. I love hearing your plant manager stories. And then there's been a whole part of your life since then, with a little sprinkling of NIL and Penn State. Who would have guessed that? You've mentioned a couple of times leadership lessons that you've learned through athletics and maybe from other places. So what are some of those really important leadership lessons that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I think the hardest thing that ate me up when I would get eaten up would be that you can only control the controllables. So it's such an easy phrase, but it's so hard that you can't. When you could play, you could go out and play harder, and you could manipulate. You could do things. You could get substitute. You could change that. But I think there's times where things happen that are out of your control. Now, it doesn't mean you throw your hands up, but you have to, when you go to bed at night and when you sleep, you have to understand you can control some of the controllables. The other thing, I learned this from a player. We always used to have a thing called painless memories. People say, "Oh, you mean painless memories?" Just never having any regrets. I'm not saying that we don't in our quiet moments at times, but you try to live so you don't have those regrets of anything that you've done. And that has always stayed with me wherever I've been, to do the best you can at that time. But you have to do that by having information, and you have to have it by doing your homework and doing everything you can before you make one of those decisions, or before you say something that you don't really mean or you're going to regret. So I think that there are a couple of the things that were really important to me. But the one thing I would say that I think is important to any listeners at any age that we do, when I was coaching, and I learned this early, and I know you do this, and I see good people do this, whether it's Ron Benjamin or Ken Lango, any of the folks that I know that I have any respect for. I use this with my players. When we would go somewhere and we would be at an organization, or we would go to meet alumni or whatever, before my players could come back to practice the next day, they had to meet two people. They had to meet two people that weren't, like, they could have stood in the corner and talked their talk, but that would have been opportunities that they missed, that they could have learned or grown or connected. So I've always been a connector. I've always been a guy that tried to learn from people wherever you go, meet new people. And if you're willing to do that, and you're willing to be fragile in the sense that, oh, I don't know them, you're going to find out that there's folks out there that have the same sometimes the same frailties that you have, or the same things that you're going through. So I would make guys meet new people, and I can't tell you how many times that come back where these guys are now connected to somebody they would have never known. They reached out and said hello. There's so many good people out there. So I guess that I would say have the passion and have the nerve to be able to reach out and to be able to introduce yourself and to be able to meet new people on the road. And then the other thing that is probably the hardest thing that we go through, and here I am doing this talking, and I'm doing a lot of talking, but the thing that I learned more than anything, and I might have learned it more when I went into development than I was when I was coaching, because when I was coaching, I probably didn't listen to many people, especially officials and all that. I had a lot of the answers. But I think the thing that the reason I'm still married, I think I have great kids. I think I became a better listener. I really do. I think I started to really not want to say the next thing, but I listened to what folks, I have notes, pages and pages of notes, and, maybe sometime I get to write, but I think listening, when you said, break it down into something, I just think that's something that is so important in every step that we take to stop and listen. Sometimes you can learn a lot.
How did you learn that, Pat, to listen?
Probably two things. One is when I went into development work, I didn't know anything about it. And I was trying to use and remember, I'd been a head basketball coach, so it stopped with me. So you go from stopping with you to that. Now that was in the work environment.
Yeah.
But the other place was at home.
Yeah.
Where I've been in trouble in my lifetime, in our 35 years of marriage, because there was times I didn't listen. I wasn't listening, and I was trying to solve my kids' problems, and sometimes they just need you to hear them. And my kids told me that, and my wife told me that. And so between the work and that is something that if I had one more day with my mom and dad, that would be the biggest thing, is I would listen more to my mom and dad, like in a day-to-day environment. Whereas you're trying to fix things, you're trying to do things, you have the answers. And that's just not the way life works. You don't have all the answers. Somebody else has some answers if you listen. Sometimes. That's
a really good word, Pat. And I give you a hall pass for talking a lot because I'm asking you questions, and that's the way this works. But you would be a great interviewer yourself because of that skill of listening. And I love you sharing that because a lot of, not all, but a fair number of our listeners are college students at our alma mater, Bucknell, and I feel very, very fortunate that when I was just out of Bucknell, one of my mentors, he was my pastor in Virginia. My wife and I were newlyweds in Virginia, was big on that. And he hammered it week after week after week, and recommended actually a book on the art of listening. And, look, I don't know about you, Pat, but I don't know too many like 20-something guys who reason themselves to that conclusion. Left to our own devices, it takes us a lot longer usually to figure these things out. I'm just so thankful that somebody said that to me when I was in my 20s and got me to think about it, because I agree with you. It's a life transforming skill.
Well, part of what makes a person successful is that part that you have the ambition and the drive and the reading ability and the emotion to be successful. But that's also the part that can get you not in trouble, but get you behind that, because you have that confidence. And that's why I said that as you grow, and your example is exactly right. I think the part for me, when you said about, we were talking about work and I was talking about, I think the thing to me to this day is the two most important words ever to me is when somebody calls me dad or somebody calls me coach. It's the ultimate respect in the coach when somebody calls me, or I get my players and call me or dad. And it's because they're the two things that in my life I put my heart and soul into, and you come out. So they're the things that eventually, when you get to this age, you start to say what's really important.
That's a really good word, Pat. Man, there's so many directions we could go. I think I'm just going to give you a little spoiler alert. I think we're going to have to do this again, so that we don't end up with a 3-hour podcast. I know Joe Rogan can do it. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I can do it. So I try to keep them shorter.
Well,
but
you had talked to me about you had said something about books and
I do want to go there. I do want to go there, Pat. I was just thinking about maybe one more question before we get there, if that's okay with you.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, so you were talking earlier about your generation versus the generation today. You were talking about the joy of play. You were also talking before about how that has something to do with why most people become coaches, because they love the joy of playing and they want to preserve it. And the question I wanted to ask you is simply this: to what degree would you say, since the basement in Pottsville up till today, how often in all of your endeavors that we've talked about around the game, to what degree did you keep the joy versus how often was it not there anymore?
As a player or
player and coach?
As a coach?
Yeah, player and coach.
Never ever left me as a player.
Wow.
Never. I can remember us losing Philadelphia and Palestra, losing to St. Joe's in the league title. Wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, I'd love to. Wish we could have won, but the competition and the competing was just so much fun.
Wow.
And enjoyed that so much.
Wow.
It goes back to the coaching where you don't have control of it all the time, and you shouldn't. That's their time to do their expression.
Yeah.
So you hear coaches, "Oh, we didn't shoot free throws, or we didn't shoot." When coaches say that, that means their kids didn't. That's part of the game. That's part of what you do. So, yeah, obviously the joy in coaching hit me. It's part of the reason I ended up retiring. But part of that too was I had lived that life and I knew what it was about, and I'd gotten to the point where, as you know, we did historical things and got to the promised land, all those things. And I just felt like, I'd been given so many opportunities. There was so much more to that. And I wanted to do other things. And because of that, probably if I didn't do that, I would never be talking with you about open discourse.
Yeah.
I probably never would have ended up being able to do some work at Milton Hershey. I probably would have never met the people that are in your Rolodex that are involved in open discourse. They're people that changed my life because I was so channeled into coaching and sports. And so as a result, it's allowed me to read. It's allowed me to write. It's allowed me to do other things. So again, I say the man, but I do think that he has a plan. I do think he, especially this time in Lent, it's very reflective. We're all being very reflective on the time. And I do think he had a big say in that direction.
Yes, indeed. That's a beautiful answer, Pat. I love it. Let's, if it's okay with you, let's move into a little bit more of a rapid fire round. I do have some trademark questions I always ask, and you put a couple of other ones on my mind. You mentioned your most recent professional chapter was at Penn State around NIL. Not looking for a 20-minute answer, but and you might just say like, nah, but I'm just curious, based on being really kind of in at the ground level, right? Are there a few thoughts that you'd want to offer to our listeners on this whole NIL thing and how they should think about it?
Probably one thing I would say about it, that if you really think hard about this is in the essence. If for anybody that has ever played or ever competed or ever been on a team, that experience is transformational in the sense that an adult, taught you how to play harder or taught you teamwork or whatever. In this day and age of NIL, Charles, it's strictly for most of these guys, it's transactional. What are you going to get paid? How much are you going to get paid? And if I don't get what I want, I'm moving on. I'm never going to stay. And you're not. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to move on. I feel terrible for the coaches nowadays. I was just with Jay Wright for a couple of days up at Bucknell. We were up at a reunion, and the whole idea of kids calling you when they have their first baby, or they change jobs, or you had a tough time with them as a freshman, sophomore. But junior and senior, the light kicked on, and they realized coach was really trying to do right by me. That's not happening because the minute there's adversity or something doesn't happen that they want, they leave. I mean, I have a story about Charles Lee, who is now the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets, one of the best players we ever had up there. Second semester of his freshman year, I suspended him for the season. He was our best player. But he wasn't doing the work academically, and he loved Bucknell too much, and he just did. He came back, and you talk about his last 2 semesters. He was on the dean's list as a senior. Went to the tournament 2 times. He's now the coach of the Hornets, and I only say that not for any kudos, but how do you do that nowadays, Charles? His family and him would have been gone the minute you said you're not doing the work academically. They would have been gone, and they would have been able to go somewhere. So those experiences is what I hope some way they find to put a cap on this, so kids can get back to being able to spend 2 or 3 years at a place and really have their life transformed as part of a team and growth and getting better and having adversity and having success. And I just don't think they're getting that now. It's all about where they're going next and what they can make. In many cases, don't get me wrong, there's Division III, there's mid-major, there's different levels, but at that level, it's so much transactional.
Wow. We could do a whole podcast just on that, Pat, and we did a whole ODC event on it. So that's a lot to think about, and we'll probably come back to that one. One other thing I was thinking about, and you just brought it out again in your comments there, Pat, you're so dedicated to your players. I mean, I all the time you'll say, this of my players called me and asked me to do this, and of course I did it. Why are you so dedicated to your players? Well,
unless you're in a locker room and you sweat and you bleed and you're together and you put so much in there, you know what 6-hour bus rides do, and practice during the holidays when everybody's home. It's funny, my wife still gets on me. My son's coaching, and he was home for 2 days at Christmas, and he was going back on the 26th. And I, as the dad, was saying, why are you going back so early? And my beautiful wife chimed in and said, do you remember leaving Christmas Day to go to Iowa? Do you remember leaving Christmas Day for a tournament? So I think it always makes me realize what the commitment was.
Yeah.
And remember, we're 18, 19 years old. Yeah. They're the most formative years you have.
Yeah.
So you have a young man in practice that, they had to report their grades before they got into practice, and you could see what grades they got, or you could go see a professor at that time if somebody was struggling. I'm not sure with all this transfer and in this NIL, a lot of that stuff's not transferable. Kids are playing 5 years and they only have 2 years of a degree. Where are those kids going to go when this is all done? So anyway, I could get on that for a long time.
Pat, you're a sports icon to our listeners. You're in your own enjoyment. What are the sports and what are the teams that you personally most love to follow and get joy from these days?
Following what teams?
Yep.
Well, I mean, obviously my Bison are.
I know. We know the Bison. We know the answer you have to give, Pat. But tell us more. Who else is on your rotation?
Yeah, I'm not a big pro guy.
Yeah.
Other than Charles Lee. Is at Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Bailey is with the Atlanta Hawks, who played 4 years for me. And J.R. Holden, who's a wonderful story. J.R. is the vice president of Detroit Pistons. So I follow those teams when I have those ties. But really, a lot of coaches, I follow teams because I really like their coaches, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And the hard part for the college game right now is they jump around so much that you see a game, you didn't even realize that kid played for that team. So I got to say Bison. I got to say my Pottsville Tide. I still follow all my guys up there. And then it comes down to different guys that are coaching at places that, I mean, obviously I loved Villanova when Jay was there.
Sure.
I mean, because he was one of our guys. So that, that's really the way it goes. I can't say anybody jumps out at me, but I do watch a lot of ball.
Yeah. It's just another way where you're manifesting your loyalty to your guys, Pat. I love it. That's a beautiful look behind the curtain in terms of your thinking. All right. I'm going to give you 3 more. Some really influential advice that you received in your life.
Wow. Probably wherever. Well, again, these are things you asked that question because I probably did them because you're proud of them. And one of the things I'm proud of, wherever I went, whatever I did, whether it was in the factory or it was the custodians at Bucknell, I knew people that were around us every day, and there was nobody invisible. So know the people that are up and down wherever you're at. Give those people a respect and know who you're in the building with. Know who you're working with. I think that's really important because I think if you make people invisible, you're going to have tough times. There's going to be times, and you want to make sure that you're all rowing in the same way. My dad used to have a saying, whether it was his or not, I'll give it to him. He used to say to me all the time, Pat, the higher a monkey climbs, the more you see. And it's probably a famous one somewhere, but I credit it to my dad.
We'll credit it to Pottsville, Pat.
It stays in my head all the time that as you go along, that's when you should give back even more. That's when you need to be more of a person, more of an educator, paying it forward. And that's always stay with me. So I think that's a really important. And then the last one I would say that I think if your daughter's listening or my son's listening or the Pope's listening, I think we all have the same thing. What are you about when nobody's looking and nobody's listening? What are you about when you hit the pillow or you wake up in the morning? Because you can't hide behind that. You can't hide. I mean, that's who you are. When nobody's looking, everybody can put on a facade. Everybody can do certain. But what are you doing when nobody's really looking? Then you really find out a lot about yourself. And I think that's one of the I say neatest, one of the things that has stayed and resonated for me my whole life.
Love it. Okay, Pat, two more. These are trademarks on this program, and I love hearing people's different answers. Your favorite world historical figure?
Well, right now, like we're in Lent, so there's obviously the big guy is what we're thinking of. But an interesting one you would have that you wouldn't think of, Muhammad Ali. And that's a reason is I grew up, as I said, east side of Pottsville. His daughter was in the hospital at the Good Sam, and he had training at Deer Lake. When he used to train there, we used to, when you could thumb, for people that don't know, you used to be able to put your thumb out and you could get a ride anywhere you wanted to. People would pick you up and give you a ride. We go down and see him train. But the reason I say Muhammad Ali is he would stop in the playground, and for all the things you read about him, and obviously like my father and people there were mad at him for different things and for his views and all. But for a figure like that, he was the nicest guy and the gentlest guy you've ever met. He came to our playground, used to play pickup basketball with us. And then years later, I was going out to the ESPYs and we rode a plane with him. He had the Parkinson and he was not in good shape. He took 20 minutes, Charles, to write my 2 sons a note that I have posted here that he wrote to my son, all because he didn't know me personally, but I said Jackson Street and Pottsville. And he took the 20 minutes is because everybody tried to get to him. His wife said, no, that's one that he will do. So anyway, he has stuck with me very big. And then one that everybody that's involved with the things that we are, the young Winston Churchill is something that I loved reading about because he was actually a soldier and leader and all that. Everybody gets going later on, but I really like the the early readings, I think I've really enjoyed. So they would be a couple things, a couple people that I really look to. I mean, I could go into, I mean, can you imagine flying a plane across the Atlantic? Like Amelia, I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, I fly from here to England and I close my eyes wondering what am I doing up there? So there's all those kind of things. And I think that inquisitiveness is it's a good thing. I wish I even had more of it, because I think that's where people light up if you reach out and be curious about things that go on. And there's a whole different group that I gave you, but they're all things that I really enjoy and I look forward. It's not just just looking at the certain athletics. People probably think that. I think I'll go back to what I said. This whole thing with us talking, I think that all came from. I know it all came from going to Bucknell. It came. I don't talk. I mean, my conversations with people, because of opening your eyes and being exposed to a lot of things, you wouldn't know it, but when I went to Bucknell, I was there 2 weeks, and I left. I left Bucknell. I loaded up my duffel bag. I went out on Route 15, and I thumbed it back to Pottsville. I knew how to go 15 to 61 to home. It was an hour and a half. Thumbed it home, showed up on my parents' doorstep. Now, I knew I could play there because I was playing pickup, and I could play. But the academic part, Charles, I was living in the library, and I wasn't going. I mean, I was living in the library, and this was not what it was for. But that's what I was doing because I was afraid of failing. So I went home and said, "This isn't for me, college." Bucknell never badgered me. Coaches called. They just were checking in. About 4 or 5 days in, I went back. My dad actually drove me up. Maybe the only time we got an ice cream in Shamokin. I don't ever remember my dad buying me an ice cream. That just wasn't that era. We go back. Obviously, it worked out. But the single thing that my mom said to me, she said, "You know what? We didn't prepare you for this. We weren't good parents." Like she would say this sometimes. And the reality of it was, I didn't want to leave home because of how wonderful my family and where I was. And maybe you went through this, and I know a lot of people probably go through it. But my point to this whole story is, I had the unbelievable family. Yeah, I was going back to that, and they needed to push me out of the nest. So family weekends, again, we grew up in Pottsville. You know what we used to do almost every family weekend at Bucknell?
What's that?
My dad would buy pizza for our floor. A lot of parents weren't even there because some folks were out in the Mediterranean or they were. My dad would buy pizza. And there's some of the best times I ever remember is he would buy pizza for the floor. That would be some of our weekends. So I bring that up because it just hit me when we talked about that, what kind of influence, but it's never straight line, right, Joe? I mean, it's, whoever's listening, everybody can tell a story. There's dips and ebbs and flows. That's what makes it so, that's what makes the whole thing so wonderful, such a journey, because you don't know what you're going to be up against. But I left, I was never going back. And imagine how different, my life would be. And a lot of things that have gone on. So anyway, that's just something to think about.
That's a great story, Pat. And I'm going to take some of my own advice from it. That clearly a good piece of advice that I can glean from your father is buy pizza for your sons or daughters' friends in large numbers. That seems like a really good life choice. And also in honor of that story and your father, I'm going to buy my kids ice cream this afternoon. Not in Shamokin, but close.
That? She's smiling.
Does that sound good?
She's smiling. Yeah.
All right. and I'll make one other editorial comment, Pat. That inquisitiveness that you were talking about, I've seen that many times. And I'm really grateful that has come out in our conversation today, because people have preconceived notions of people. People have preconceived notions of me. If you just Google Pat Flannery, your preconceived notion will be athletics, coach,
right.
Jock, whatever.
Right.
I have had the delight of observing that inquisitiveness in you throughout our friendship, and it's awesome, and it's part of why I value so much having you in my life. So I'm glad that you brought that out.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. We know how we met. That was after I was done up there, and I've been involved in so much stuff. If I could, wanted to say two things that I'm going to share.
Great.
That I want you to hear.
Great.
One is, you asked about books.
Yes.
And there's two things that I wish everybody would read. And one happens to be, now would be a good time. There's a book called The Other Wes Moore. It is a fabulous book. Obviously, it's the Baltimore, the mayor and all, but it's called The Other Wes Moore, and it's about decision making in your life. And it's something everybody should read. It's really good. The other one that is really good is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Crap. And maybe you've already read it. People think, and when I was given it, it sounds like arrogance.
Yeah.
It's not arrogance at all.
Yeah.
It's about awareness. It's about happiness being a constant, striving. You're never going to get completely there. It's about picking and choosing and working on things. And it sounds like you already read it. But those two books are two books that were game changers for me. And I've read them over and over a number of different times. But I just wanted to share it. I mean, I could go into other things we've read, but you would think it would be the John Wooden book, or you think, but that really, they weren't the ones. The Feinsteins, I read all of them. These are the ones that really had some impact on me. So anyway, I just share it with you. I don't know how you're going to be able to collate all this talking, but I hope Steve can make me look at not a babbling coach. But I do appreciate the time, and I appreciate the work that you do, and Bill and all the people that are invited, the Brighties, the Shanemans, all wonderful people. And the reason being is it's about our kids. It's about our kids. If somebody wants to get in the way of that, so be it, if that's what they want to do, or turn it into something. But it's about our kids having the same opportunities that we had.
Amen. Well, Pat, thank you for a beautiful conversation, and I'll just tell you in closing something you might get a kick out of, given your appreciation for philanthropy. I haven't officially announced this yet, but today seems like a good day. Those book recommendations that you gave, what my wife and I have decided to do with our gift to the ODC this year is get copies of all of the books that people like yourself have recommended, and put them in a library of sorts at our headquarters, so that today's Bucknell students, when they hear this interview and they say, The Other Wes Moore, I'd like to read that, right? Or The Subtle Art, I'd like to read that.
Yeah.
So we're going to make that possible. So your words are not going to disappear.
Great idea.
I married up just like you did. So we're going to get that done, Carissa and I. And I'll just tell you one other thing quickly. I'm always working. We're working to try and introduce some Bucknell students to Governor Wes Moore. So fingers crossed that might work out. And if and when it does, we'll bring some copies of your book, and the students will get them signed. Or if
I recommended it for the freshman reading.
Excellent.
A number of years when I was up there working, that I thought it would have been a great, whether they did it or not, I don't know. But I'd love to see the cumulative list you have of books of the folks you have at some point.
We're going to put it out. So we're going to work on that. We're going to do some more ODC programming in your backyard in Annville. And
I'll be there.
We're going to have a wonderful year. Pat, thanks so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I'm honored by it. Thanks again for listening to the Open Discourse podcast. This podcast is brought to you through the generosity of the Shearer Group of Companies in State College, Pennsylvania. If you'd like to keep it going, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and consider making a donation at opendiscoursecoalition.org/donate. See you next week.